Today we're going to paint a bold, colorful landscape in the style of the Fauves. I've got my colors out here, the same ones we always use. And we're going to start with our background. I'm going to start with my number 12 round, and we're going to start with a beautiful blue background sky, blue and purple background sky, so a little bit of phthalo blue, tiny bit, mostly titanium white. Lay that down. I'm going to be doing a lot of mixing on the canvas. And don't worry about those paint strokes blending. We actually don't want them to blend. I'm going to pick up a little more titanium white over here. Wipe my brush. Pick up a tiny bit of Quin Magenta, put it in over here. White, titanium white. That'll just blend right into that phthalo and give us a really pretty kind of lavender up there in that corner of the sky. Let's have a little bit more Quin Magenta. Just let it blend right on the canvas. You want all those paint strokes to show because we're painting in the style of the Fauves, and they were known as the wild beasts. That's where that term came from. They were known for that because of their wild colors, their wild brush strokes, and the way that they painted nature the way that they wanted to see it rather than what was really there. So we are going to paint a pink mountain. Now this is something like what Derain or even Matisse would have done some painting like this. So I'm going to get my number 6 round, make sure it has no water on it, and I'm going to mix up a vibrant pink. I'm going to start with Quin Magenta, put some titanium white into it. Make sure it's a really bold pink. We don't want anything wishy-washy. When you're painting like the Fauves, it's bold. It has to be bold. Okay, I've got some nice Quin Magenta with a little bit of titanium white. Let's just lay that down right there. Big, bold, pink mountain. And of course, we know it doesn't look like that in nature. That's not the point. The point is to express yourself. So the Fauves had a wonderful way of painting with big, bold color and really pushing the colors of nature. So let's round that off a little bit up there. There we go. I don't want my paint too juicy because I do want it to dry, and we're going to have some lighter colors that go over the pink mountain. There we go. And I think I want it just a little bit lighter up here. Let's work some titanium white into that. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfectly blended. Just give it a little bit of variety there. Okay. Alrighty. Now let's pull in some of our phthalo blue. I'm going to start working that down here with a little bit of titanium white. Get some texture going up there into that mountain. A little bit more titanium white. Get some texture going. Wipe my brush. Now I'm pulling that magenta down into that blue. And I'm creating all this texture. Pull that magenta down there. And now let's come back with a little titanium white and lighten everything up. And just letting those brush strokes show. Don't try to hide your brush strokes. If you look at the paintings done by Derain or Maurice Vlaminck or even Matisse. He did a lot of Fauve paintings. You'll see lots of brush strokes, lots of really fun brush strokes. Okay, real expressionistic. Okay, dokie, let's get that done. Now we're going to work on some land here in the foreground. And you know me, I'm not going to wipe my brush. Why would I wipe my brush? Or wash it. I'm going to wipe it, but I'm not going to wash it. So I'm going to pick up some of my Benz Medazlo in yellow, and I'm just going to lay it down right here. It's going to make all kinds of different things going on here. There's going to be green. If it gets into some of that magenta, it may go a little brown. And it doesn't bother me one bit. I want all those mixtures. Now, wipe my brush. Come back and get some more yellow. Lay it down. Add a little titanium white. Have fun with it. Golly, life is too short to be worried about brush strokes, I'll tell you that. Okay, just keep going with that. Come down into the foreground. Add a little more yellow. The yellow down here will be cleaner because we're not picking up any of that magenta. Just keep going. We're going to have all this beautiful land here. We're going to play with that in a minute. Just keep loading up that foreground with that beautiful yellow. You'll see I'm going to get some of that more muted paint on my brush because I have some of the magenta and some of the blue and a little bit of everything on my brush, and it's fine. Not going to hurt anything, right? Not going to hurt anything at all. We're just going to have all this yummy texture and all this wonderful color. Just layering it. Look at all that fun texture we've got. And what have we been working for 5-6 minutes? That didn't take long at all, did it? Okay, now I'm going to pull some of this more muted color down here. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to kind of take my brush and hold it sideways and kind of pat so that I've got kind of the sensation of a little grove of trees back there or some bushes or something. Just hold your brush sideways. We've got all of this sort of diagonal paint strokes up here. Just hold your brush sideways and just kind of pat. And see, we've got that nice transition between that kind of muddy yellow-green back here and the brighter green in the foreground. That's exactly what we want. Okay, now you know what happens next. You're going to put this in front of a cool fan or a cool hair dryer for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and do layer number 2. Okay, we're back. We're going to paint some wonderful trees right here in the foreground. So for that, I am going to get my number 6, and we're going to start with some titanium white and a little bit of yellow. So I've got my titanium white and a tiny bit of yellow over here. Make sure you load your brush. Get a nice juicy layer of white. And start at the top and work your way down. This particular tree is going to go all the way off the canvas. So start at the top and draw down and roll your brush as you go. Roll it. And that will give you a wonderful wobbly tree. And that's what we want because nature rarely gives us a tree that's straight up and down. I want a little bit more yellow right here. There we go. Okay, now we'll have another couple of those here that won't be as big because they're receding into the distance. So don't press down too hard with your paintbrush. Keep your paintbrush, just kind of hold it in the tips of your fingers like this. Just hold it really gently and pull down. And this one's not going to go all the way off the page either. So start about here and pull up. It's going to be thinner. Don't press down as hard. And we'll stop right about there. Let's have one more. 3 is always better than 2 in composition. And let's go right about here and pull up. There we go. Okay, looking good. Now let's have one more over here. It's going to be kind of off in the distance. It's going to also, the trunk is also going to be a little bit darker. So we're going to pick up a tiny bit of Quin Magenta, go into our mixture that we had with the yellow, a little bit more yellow, and just about here, like so. You don't want it too big. Make sure it breaks the top of that mountain, okay? All right, now let's have some fun with that foliage on the trees. So it's primarily going to be yellow. So we'll start with yellow, and remember that yellow by itself is really transparent. So we're going to want to come back with some titanium white. But let's start with yellow. Just going to have a few here to begin with. Kind of pat, and you see how that yellow does not stand up on top of that dark blue background or dark purple background. So you pay attention to that. We're just going to put the placement here of our foliage first. I'm doing that with my number 6. Don't put those down too heavy. We're going to mix right on top of them. We'll have a few little bits of foliage here and there. Just keep building. Over here, this one's going to be a little bit more solid because we're going to see the entire tree. So we're going to build up that entire tree. And I say this, I sound like a broken record. I say this every time we paint trees. Leave air. Trees are not solid objects. They have lots of air. So make sure you leave some air. Okay, we've got this started over here. Let's come back with our titanium white. And we'll just work back on top of this. And you may be wondering, well, why didn't we just mix the titanium white into the yellow to begin with? Well, because when we do it this way, when we've got the yellow and then we come back on top of it with the white, the mixture is a little bit more natural. It doesn't look quite so much like a color right out of a bottle or out of a tube. So that's why you want to mix on the canvas. And also because you can't come back, it's impossible to come back and put the white right on top of where the yellow was. You'll always go to the side, to the top, somewhere like that, and that really makes it look natural. I'm going to put a little clean titanium white out because my titanium down here was getting muddy. It had different colors in it. I want some clean titanium white. So I'm just going to come back on top. And even though this guy right here is really wobbly, he's just a little bit too wobbly. You know what I mean? So let's fix him up just a little bit. He was just a little too wobbly. There, he didn't look like he would stand up. And this one here, I'm just going back with my number 6 and just giving them a little bit, of help with that trunk because it was just a little bit, I got carried away with the wobbliness. That's what happens, you get carried away. So that's a little better. He still has a little bumpy stuff going on, and that's good. That's good, because then he looks natural. Okay, let's continue on with our foliage. I'm going yellow, white, and just tapping with my brush. I'm going to fill in a little bit. We do want a lot of air, but we also want that foliage to look lush. Just keep tapping and filling that in. Back and forth, white, yellow, white, yellow. I think we need a little more over here. I'm going to bring a little bit down here. A little more white over here. So our trees are looking pretty good. A little bit of extra foliage on these guys. And this fellow back here, he needs a little bit of white, but we don't want it to be too bright because he's a little bit in the distance. So don't overdo his. Okay. I think we've got just about what we need. I want to come back and make some of these paint strokes a little less looking like a brush stroke. So I'm coming back, the paint's getting a little bit dry, so I can kind of pat onto the paint and get a little bit of a nicer texture. Okay. Okay, finally, let's do a little bit of landscaping around our trees. I'm going to grab a little phthalo blue, a lot of my yellow, making a green here. Let's make that quite a bit more yellow. There we go. That's more what we want. Let me test that. That's way too dark. Let's have more yellow. That's better. I think that's what we want. Yeah, that's better. So I just want to have a little bit of variation here so that I don't have everything just absolutely the same. A little bit of my green here. Oops, picked up that dark green. Don't need that. Let's put some yellow into that to knock it back a little bit. There we go. A little bit of titanium white wouldn't hurt. Just going to kind of vary the, whoops, picked up a lot of phthalo blue on my brush. Let's wipe that off the canvas. There we go. Wipe it off my brush. Come back with my titanium white and blend that in. A little bit of my green. just to give us a little landform in the front here. A little bit more of my green over here, a little bit of my titanium white. Just gives us a nice landform in the front there. Okay, now I want to reestablish these trees on that landform, so I'm going to rinse my brush, grab a little bit of titanium white, and just come down a little bit like this. Just enough so that that tree sits on top of that land that we created there. A little bit of titanium white will do that. And we'll do that here and here. And this one, we'll just pull a little bit of that down as well. Get a nice edge to our tree there. Good. Now we've got those nice trees sitting right on top of that landform. And I think one final thing I'll do, I think I'll make this tree trunk just a little bit darker since it's off in the distance. I'm just going to take some of this dark green. I'm going to add a tiny bit of quin magenta to it. And I'm just going to make this tree trunk a little bit darker. Touch of titanium white to that. There we go. Just a couple of little final details on our tree here. Let's have a little bit of some branches. I'm going to take some quin magenta. I've got a dark green going over here. Just going to make kind of a muddy brown. Quin magenta, phthalo blue. Just make a kind of a mud. That's all you need. Just a tiny bit of that and just a tiny, tiny bit of water. And take your number 6, and we're going to make some very fine branches. So I want one right here and one right here. Really tiny. Don't make them too big or too obvious. We want them really tiny. That's why I love these brushes, because they stay to such a nice point. They make a really nice point. Okay, we've got our branches here in the front. Let's just put a little bit of foliage back on top of them. Just a tiny bit. There we go. Perfect. Okay, that is our Fauve landscape with a great pink and purple mountain back there. Thank you so much for joining me for that beginner-friendly acrylic painting in the Fauve style. Don't forget to hit that subscription button and that notification bell, and remember what I always say, keep painting.